Question for Duncan. That's better. A term that's been used in the past about included bark unions is compression forks.
Yes.
Is there any evidence that you actually get incremental growth in the internal part of an included bark union?
It's silly of me to say that this is dealt with in my book, isn't it? Because I believe the AA is not actually publishing any more of them, but it is in my book that there's very limited evidence. I've actually time-lapsed some bark inclusion failures, showing that it's still, I mean, you can tell where it's live here on something like this. It's live on a lip as it enters into the bark inclusion, but very often it's then pressed to death inside.
So is there any actual compressive force forcing the two apart?
There will be some, but it doesn't seem to add up to anything of any significance to make them fail. That's in the book, and also having found natural bracing to be the primary cause, and I can wire something up. It's not looking like they're pressing so hard together, is it? Again, I didn't put that one on. I did that about 2 years ago at this conference at the same university. I just pointed out, well, don't call them compression forks, but you only need to read our British standard to realise that we do call them compression forks. That's another thing that's come up with no evidence. Maybe we should just set a bar at, if we're going to use a term, let's have some evidence it's a good term and there's some good science behind it. Okay.
Right to the back.
Hello? Yep.
That's a quiet question.
So so a lot of arborists that will take off the last section, removing a stem with a codominant. When they take off the last section, the saw will bind about halfway through. So I wonder if there's no compression forces, what is that force? Because it's not a weight of the branch. The branch is gone. You follow what I'm saying? You're just taking off the last 20 centimeters of the stub, and you're cutting into sort of the bottom of the inclusion, and the saw stops. It happens a lot. So what is causing it to stop if it's not force, compressive force?
Are you not cutting into an area that's got growth stresses? Like auxiliary wood has a lot of growth stresses in it, as do all reaction woods.
Well,
So
I mean, this is just practicing arborists that do this all the time. You have to bring your saw out, start again, make a second cut.
If you cut into tension wood or compression wood or flexure wood, you will find that you're releasing pre-strain. And when I'm saying auxiliary wood is much the same. It's pre-strained. There's abnormal level of growth stresses in the auxiliary wood.
And Shigo coined that area what do you call
Compacted
it?
xylem.
Compacted xylem. Why do we need a different term? Was that not good enough?
No, because that suggests it's been damaged.
The word compacted suggests damage?
Yeah, if you compact something with compacted soil, that's damage. You compact a Coke can, that's damaged.
Compacted concrete isn't, or compacted soil underneath the road is good. Just a question. I'm not trying to cause trouble too much.
It's really interesting because Dr. Shigo described the word and then allocated it no mechanical role in that paper. Whereas essentially by testing it, I mean, if it plays no mechanical role, how are those two branches joined? You know? So from that point of view, it was a good description of the wood type, but a total misallocation of what it's doing. And not only that, the paper has come out last year saying that this is sacrificial tissue. I mean, sure, let's just cut through this and see how this junction gets on. So it does need a change of terms from my perspective.
So I think there's certainly scope for that revision of terminology and some simple guidance seems to be coming out quite clearly. Can we pose a question to one of the other speakers? Ted?
Yeah.
You can?
Oh, yeah.
One to Anna.
I know you work with foresters. I know you work with foresters, and I'm very interested in the. I don't know why it's me. I know you work with foresters. But a lot of your pictures of bracket fungi frighten me. Telling this audience that they're pathogens is very scary. Ah, good.
Sorry. Sorry, no, they are not pathogens. The wood decay, they are not pathogens. They are just decaying the dead wood that is in the tree. They are no, the only true pathogens there was Armillaria and Heterobacillium. They were true pathogens.
Okay.
And the other ones, Formitiporia, we are doing some research on it because we are not sure if it's able to cause cancers on planes, and at the moment we are doing some inoculation on trees, but the other ones are decay fungi. They are just decaying the dead wood. Definitely not pathogens. It's what I wanted to represent in there is what kind of inquiries we have on this host, and maybe I did say pathogens, but definitely no. You are right, they are not pathogens.
Okay, I'll buy you a meal tonight.
Thank you.
One at the wing here. And the tip is apparently to hold it still.
Yes, thank you. A question for Luke. Very often trees are reduced to poles. This is often at the request of insurers or similar people, and the trees die. And in some cases, the tree is obviously been killed by an invasion of honeysuckle or pathogen, but in many cases, the trees are completely dead, and the honeysuckle comes in almost afterwards as a supplicant. What is the mechanism? What is happening here? You can have trees, often trees of a species that normally would respond to being cut down, trees like poplars and willows. But occasionally you get trees that just so dead, and the client says to you, what's killed my tree? And very often I say, well, it's post-traumatic stress following a major operation. It's the nearest thing I can do to explain. Thank you.
You're correct. If you take all the leaf area off a tree, if the tree doesn't have the ability to replace that leaf area within a reasonable time, then it's going up. There's down at Hatfield Forest, there's been a few observations of some of the old lapsed hornbeams that were pollarded for the first time for a long time, and they seem to sprout and they seem to do okay, and then a few years later they died. Now, one interpretation of this is that they sprouted, and the shoots were living on the remains of the stored carbohydrate and potentially stored water as well, but they weren't able to grow a whole new set of xylem and phloem and cambium down to the roots and to maintain the roots living. So eventually, because they weren't getting, they used up the stored water and the stored carbohydrates, these shoots, which looked quite vital for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years, finally died because they didn't have the oomph to keep the roots and the sapwood and the bark and phloem going as well.
Anybody else on the panel want to comment?
Our worst ever case was a church calling in saying these cedars haven't had leaves on for 2 years. Are they okay? I think Luke's onto something. They kind of need leaves. Couldn't believe it. They're big cedars, and I couldn't believe it. I think they'd still be alive. Couldn't believe it.
Hello, still working? Yeah. Question for Anna. When you get the reports of the various diseases and things to go and investigate, are you looking at whether the incidence, the numbers of reports you're getting are being infected by differences in the weather or the climate? Are you looking at factors on the site that might be influencing how susceptible trees may be to particular diseases, or abiotic features like the stress alongside a road, compaction, all those things, as well as simply the pathogen?
Yeah, we look to everything, especially that's why it's important that we collect all the information regarding the site, because in many cases it could be you have the wrong tree or the right tree in the wrong place, if you want to call it that way. Sometimes it's, we have such a kind of diverse cases. You cannot look only to the pathogen, you have to look to the tree and to the conditions the tree is in.
Now, are you finding any increases in those sort of cases because of our weather's gone weird? Yeah.
I have to say, for example, with some pathogens, we have seen an increase. And you see, for example, I talk about Neonectria species, and it's quite interesting. The conditions have been good for all the Neonectria species. Then what we have seen is an increase, not only on one species of Neonectria. There are many different species of Neonectria that can affect different trees. Then what I have seen in the last few years is an increase in Neonectria species in all of them. Then I know the conditions are right for the pathogen. And I look back also to the old records. I'm so glad that we have the old records. And you go back and you can see that sometimes it's like a cycle. When you look back to the records, you see actually, and we're looking to see if the weather conditions were the same, because sometimes it's just, you have the same conditions and the cycle repeats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh. Oh, okay.
I wondered about the usability, practicalities of using ArborCheck in the field.
Big trees and things like that, and whether there was great variability spatially within the crown, or even during not only the season but during the day, and how you could get reliable readings, particularly on big trees.
Expecting the light to come on. There we go. So the variability in measuring big trees is the question. As long as you're doing your visual assessment and you're looking for that variability, I think it's pretty good in that terms. You saw my slide before with the differences between one side versus another. So the app currently has a limit of 10 leaves per measurement, so there's no reason you can't do that measurement 10 times around the canopy, or 5 times, or however many times you think from your visual assessment it's needed. So,
But have you looked into, for instance, any differences between epicormic growth and growth higher up in the crown?
So I haven't published anything on that. There would be I would expect to see differences in that, because it's a different, if you like, a different functional unit, and especially if the upper canopy is dying back, then you could think of that again as a different functional unit. So I don't think you can measure epicormics and expect it to express the health of the entire tree. But I think, like I say, as long as you keep your eyes open, if you want to know the health of the epicormics, then by all means measure that. And if you want to look at differences between upper canopy and lower canopy, then do 10 leaves from the upper canopy and 10 leaves from the lower canopy, and it'll give you the information hopefully you're after.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time with the questions, so just very quickly to review the 4 talks. I think we've had a really refreshing mix of theory, science, applied. We've had words, we've had graphs, we've had demonstrations. So I think a really excellent mix. I suppose the single line headlines from each of the talk that I recall was Luke reminded us about the need for the tree to be in balance, and the different pathways that the chemicals send signals, whether it's natural stimulants or what we're doing to them. I think that we heard about armpit wood, and so I think there's a certain themes come out of the day of, I'm sure there's a project to be done there, from armpit microbiota to armpit wood or something, which, yeah, definitely. Anna, I think the key message was, if you think something looks a bit odd, then report it. And the more reports we get, the more those spatial and temporal patterns come out. And then I think we've started to see the future in terms of some objective measurements of some of the the trade-off between vitality and health. So a really excellent set of talks, so please show your appreciation to the speakers.